Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. We're going to do that one more time. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you. For those that don't know me, I'm Basil Smikle. I'm the Director of the Public Policy Program here at the Roosevelt House Institute of Public Policy. Before I introduce our guest today, just wanted to give a brief shout out to the folks who've been involved in putting this together: Maria, Bianca, Danny, Monica, and really the whole team as we do these podcast events. They're available on Spotify when this is all said and done. But it's a way for our faculty, our students, and guests from outside in the community to really get to hear from people who do the work. And I will always center students in what we do. So one student who will remain nameless, because I promised her we would, when asked about the difference between political science and public policy, she's come to the understanding now that she's in our program that we solve problems. That is what we do here. And we like to bring individuals who are in the field, expert in the field, who do this advocacy work, who solve problems every single day. Just so you know, for we do, for those that don't know, we do a minor and a certificate program here, so you can get information from Bianca in particular about the ways that you can, if you're not already done so, sign up to get a minor or certificate program in public policy. We have a couple of upcoming events. We have on October 24th, Alika Ampry-Sample, the Regional Director of HUD, Department of Housing and Urban Development, will be here to talk about her job, housing and urban development, housing in particular, and sort of her path. She used to be a city council member from the borough of Brooklyn, borough of Kings, and now she is working representing HUD in New York and New Jersey. So we're excited to have her on the 24th. On November 11th, we are working on and have just finalized a visit from the president of the National Urban League, Mark Morial, to talk about his book, but also some of the work that he's doing right now, particularly as we lead up to the 2024 presidential election. I happened to see him at the Congressional Black Caucus in D.C. Last week, so we're really excited to bring him here to Roosevelt House. But that said, we do a lot of great programming. We have a lot of great coursework here. We have a lot of people who audit our classes because they're just excited about some of the conversations that we have. So we look forward to seeing you in the building more often. How many of you have been here for the first time? Are you here for the first time? Oh, look at that. So I spent 5 minutes telling you everything you already know. Okay, great. Well, welcome back. Welcome back, and it's good to see you. And I am so excited to have my dear friend. We've known each other now maybe 14, 15 years, something like that.
Yeah, right about that.
Elsia Vásquez, who is head of this great organization called P.A.L.A.N.T.E Harlem. For full disclosure, I'm actually on the board of the organization. And for fuller disclosure, when I had an issue in my building, which had been going on for quite some time, a lot of the residents, tenants know what I do for a living. They're like, "Hey, man, you got to help." So of course, she's the first person I called. It's a really interesting sort of story because, and I'll just say this very briefly because it really is pertinent. We had someone who was actually causing problems for the tenants in the building. He wasn't paying rent. The city had given him a one-shot to pay his rent, I think twice. So we, the taxpayer, paid $30,000 so he could stay, or something like that, so he could stay in his apartment. But he was dealing drugs out of the apartment, and a lot of people were getting high in the apartment and overdosing in the hallway. And there were like 2 deaths in the building, in the hallway. And by the way, he's my next door neighbor. And this was going on for years, and we couldn't get him out. And I called Elsie, and I was like, "Look, I know that you fight to keep tenants in the building. I need to get one out. Like, how do we do that? How does this work?" But beyond that, she long story short, he has been since been evicted, but now we can turn our attention to all the other stuff that was wrong in the building. And suffice to say, like, people's apartments are getting fixed, and the violations are being dealt with because she came to my living room on 2 separate Saturdays to get the tenants organized and to get us to act collectively, and that was extraordinarily important. So first and foremost, thank you, because it looks like I have a brand new apartment.
No,
now,
you're
so
very welcome. I love doing that.
so thank you, first and foremost. But again, it is extraordinary to have you here, because I love hearing your story, talking about what you do. So as I introduce you, please also introduce the folks that you have with you. So, Director of P.A.L.A.N.T.E Harlem, Elsia Vásquez, thank you so much for coming to Roosevelt House. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, my name is Elsia Vásquez, as Basil said. I'm the founder and executive director of P.A.L.A.N.T.E. So I founded this organization, and P.A.L.A.N.T.E has been able to have such a great reputation because of the staff and the volunteers. And with me today is Jackie Green. Jackie Green is in charge of communications and marketing. So when you guys go to our website and social media, that's the guy that's getting it done, which is a great space. And then, of course, there's Jack McClatchy. He joined us not too long ago, but he's actually our Director of Public Policy and Special Projects, because we have a lot of projects on the pipeline. And this is a brand new position, but we know the need for our organization to get a person of his caliber to help us really change policies, because at the end of the day, we need to change laws.
And tell us how you got to where you're, because you've had an interesting story in terms of your trajectory.
Yeah. Well, so I'm originally a Wall Street kid. I was in the financial sector my whole life.
Where are you from?
I'm from the Dominican Republic. I actually migrated here when I was 7 years old. My mother brought me here 11 months after she migrated here, through the visa and all of that. And I'm from West Harlem. I grew up in West Harlem. In West Harlem back, when I was growing up, it was all burned up. It wasn't, crack epidemic, all the epidemics, we saw that. And I'm one of the few, my family's one of the few people in that neighborhood that has been able to get their parent, not my generation, above, to actually, graduate from college. So I left the neighborhood. I got my own apartment, clearly, because, I wanted to make money and I wanted to party. And then I just started working in Wall Street. My first job was at Solomon Smith Barney, a 7-wall trade. I actually worked in the public relations department, and I'll be happy to tell you that when Warren Buffett was doing Berkshire Hathaway, I was the girl that got him the documents.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, it was me. I was on the PR, and I actually had the presentation packet. But
none of those bearer bonds slipped into your pocket.
No, none of them. No. That's the first time I met Warren Buffett. I'll never forget, because he looked like a simple dude, But most importantly is that the reason why I decided to change careers is because my job before was actually, I used to teach financial advisors how to maximize their practice. So depending how much money they made, and the asset management firms that I worked for, they would get access to me, and then I would be able to help them. But when you have a nice job, you come from your neighborhood, and then you find out that the landlord, you want to live in Manhattan, the landlord does not want to make repairs. And it wasn't in my apartment, actually, it was in the public areas. I was just asking for clean hallways, because I could not justify my salary, bringing in guests, and then, everything is out there in the hallway. And sure enough, I would travel a lot, hardly ever home. My apartment was, it was a museum. I was never really home. I was traveling on business. But then one day that I had taken up residency at the Waldorf, actually was local, and it was 5 days straight. And I remember getting to the 3rd floor of my building, and I said to myself, please just tell me that's not on the 5th floor, because I had the 5th floor walk up. And sure enough, when I went upstairs, I got to the 5th floor, and anything you can imagine was in my lobby. And I had for years, I had been financing the cleaning of the building, because if I was going to have guests coming over to visit, clearly my lobby, I have to, you know what I'm trying to say. So everybody benefited with me, because I lived on the 5th floor, so we had the lobby and one side of the building cleaned. But then that one day when I came, and there were mice running around, I remember it was raining that day. The lights up, it came out like a Freddy Krueger movie. And I was like, I'm done. I called 311, and then when I tell them that there was this couch obstructing the staircase to the roof, They sent the fire department. Of course, I'm venting, you know, because we're talking about 9 p.m. at night. I just got in. I have to be in work the next day. You know, I mean, I'm paying my rent. The tenants are paying their rent. And next thing you know, like about a few hours later, I'm about to take a bath. And I remember going like this in the water. I was saying, you know, when you sit in the tub on the edge and you start going like this, and I'm on the phone with my sister, and my cat passes by, and my cat is bleeding. And I had a black cat. That's how P.A.L.A.N.T.E started. So I picked up my cat like any cat mama would do, run over to the animal medical center. I don't know if any of you guys know, pet lovers, but that's a very expensive shop, right? So I come back with a half a shaved cat, the whole funnel, blood work. I mean, it was a mess, you know, and it was my pet. So that next morning, I didn't go to bed because it was too late by the time that I got back. And I called my landlord. That was the first time I called my landlord. And I said, listen, I'm done financing your porter. Like, I buy him a bottle of Johnny Black. I give him $40.
By the way, if you don't know what Johnny Black is, it's a nice scotch for the house.
Yeah.
It's a nice scotch.
Yeah. So, you know, and I told him, I'm like, I'm done catering. And he said something to me that started with an F and ended with a U.
Ooh.
He said, who are you? I'm like, I'm your tenant on the 5th floor that have been, you know, supporting your alcoholic porter because we didn't have a super. And he says something that ended like that. I said, you know what? I'm going to make an example out of you. And I had no idea, but I can tell you one thing, Basil. I came in from work. That was in August. And in Harlem, everybody's hanging out in front of their stoop in August with their kids coming from school, yada, yada, from summer school. And I was surprised when I asked my neighbors, I'm like, you know, I'm very upset about the public areas. What do you think? They're like, you're upset about public areas? So what they did was they took me to their apartments. And there they had black mold, they had cascading leaks. It's remarkable how some of our families, hardworking families, are paying their rent and they reconstruct so as not to bother the landlord. So I went to apartments that they were cascading leak on one side of the building, cascading right above the toilet. So they were tenants, like apartments of tenants that actually they put a garbage bag, taped it so that it would curl over into the tub. It was amazing. So what I did was those neighbors told us about the building next door. And the building next door told us, it was just the same landlord. And those guys told us about another building on 141st Street. We started 146, then we 141st Street. Then we came down to the village to find the other landlord's building. But the needs of uptown were very different than the needs of downtown. They had squatters, you know, down in the village. Our issues were mold, bed bugs that were eating the children, lead. I mean, you name it, it existed. And yet the tenants were paying the rent. So what we did with Basil was I started, you know, taking off from work, going to see if anybody can help me. I went to elected officials. I went to all of the local nonprofits, all of them, in Harlem, East Harlem, Washington Heights. And nobody wanted to help us. So I just said, you know what? It can't be that hard. So we built a tenants association.
What year was this?
This was 2000. We started our rebel rousing. We started September of 2006. That's our anniversary, September 18th, our official anniversary. But I told them, I said, you know, it can't be that hard for us to assert, you know, our right to inhabitable conditions. So what we did was I started reading stuff. Remember, there was the social media and online stuff was not as it is today. But I said, it can't be that hard. So what we did, we built a tenant association. I was the president, each building had representation, vice president, you know, just generic stuff. Then I said, you know what, there's one man strike, let's make them come to us. We filed what's called an HP action, which is a lawsuit where you force the landlord to make repairs. And then I had a feeling that he was not going to make the repairs, because he was an SPT landlord. But we also realized that he was illegally registering our apartments as New York City co-ops and condos and all of that. So we took...
What's the benefit of that to him?
They were trying to deregulate units, and so we caught him right on time. But you should see, like, you know, I literally, in order for us to get what we needed, you know, the nonprofits were not helping us, we would go, well, I would go, and just hang out at the office at HPD code enforcement. Like, how does this work, right? I sat at the HPD, then I went to HPD's Housing Preservation Development, for those of you that don't have it in charge of that enforcement. And then I went over, and that lady told us about something I didn't know, which was DHCR, Division of Housing Community Renewal. Those guys oversee the rent regulated apartments. And then they gave me this report. I'm like, I don't live in a co-op, and definitely not a condo, right? So what we did was, We filed the HP, we also filed for an Article 7A, which basically removes all of the management responsibilities of the landlord. And then we went to Supreme Court for legal rent overcharges, missing security deposits, and we filed a $5 million lawsuit. But we knew, that to do this, we needed money. We knew that we needed to hire attorneys, which we did. And we knew that we needed elected officials as well. So we started, only one group helped us. And that group, a nonprofit, is called 116 Block Association. They were the ones that told us, hey, go to the precinct to get rid of all the crack kids in the basement, go to your elected officials. You have 3 buildings, there are different elected officials. Like, I had no idea how this worked. But I tell you one thing, that in 11 months of our initial rebel rousing, all 3 buildings were taken away from the landlord. We did this. And when you're looking at we refers to 70 to 98-year-old senior citizens. Those are the black folks. Then we had the Dominicans were just 2. It was me in another apartment. We had Mikhail, he was Russian. And then everybody else was either Mexican or Salvadorian, and everybody was undocumented. And it's to us, and to me personally, it's really inspiring when you're able to, to really inspire someone so that they can assert their right, because the way that these folks are living was just really inhumane. I mean, there was nothing wrong with my apartment. But the cool thing, and nobody really knows, is you guys are the first ones that really know this, but since I was just so disgusted, with the way that I had to sponsor the cleaning and everything, I had applied for housing elsewhere. But the thing is that I started my rebel rousing because of Pooch, my cat. It turns out that right before our first court date, I got my own apartment and I'm an owner. So we were like, what do you do? But, I could not turn my back on these folks. I started the rebel rousing. So from 2007, which is when we filed the lawsuit, all the way to 2012, the landlord had no idea I did not live in the building. Like, they had no idea. And there was one attorney that in 2012, he goes to the judge and goes, "In your honor, Ms. Vasquez doesn't even live in the apartment." And all the tenants were in court, like, "Aha, you just figured it out, But, it's about, the reason why I say this story is because it's really about, making a commitment, not taking, the landlord's word as an answer, and really saying, you know what, nobody wants to help us, but we can do this ourselves. It's not, cannot be rocket science.
Right, but it didn't just stop there, like you used
Oh, yeah,
this
and I'll tell you the cool story.
You used this to start a whole.
Oh, yeah. So the cool thing, Basil, you also do not know this. So through the whole rebel rousing for those 11 months, the new super, because we didn't have a super before, he would say to me, "They're going to kick you out. You're going to go out." And I'm like, "I bet you go out before I do." And it just back and forth. Mind you, I'm working at this point, I'm working at Alliance Bernstein. I'm having, having to come and have these little fights with this super, the so-called super. And so we won, which was on January, it was December 22nd, exactly, in 2007 that we won. And every building had the deposit of the rents into a bank account, so we had every bank account on each bill to separate the money from the mingle. And that money, it was to show the judge, to show the agency, like, we're not interested in keeping this money. We're not here for no rent abatement. We're here because we need to live in habitable conditions. So every month, we had the treasurer for each building would collect the rents, deposit the rents, and we had great bookkeeping. And again, we learned this ourselves, that we had to make sure that we were transparent, that we were complying, but of course the judge at that time, I don't know how much money we had, and we went to tell her, I would refuse to tell. But the reality is that we had a little bit over $500,000 in rent, because everybody paid the rent. The issue here was not to pay the rent. So finally, we won December 22nd, or 23rd, we had a big party on the ground floor, and the super was still harassing me. And the family administrator, I said to him, that was the court-appointed person that was going to manage the property, I said, "Listen, we have 3 checks for you." I said, "But the first thing we want to do is we want to manage this money. We need a new border, because we didn't have the border, it was broken." People like the seniors, Basil, when the animals would pick them up because of the lack of heat, they would not come back, so it became personal for me. But I said, you know what, they're just intentionally not getting by the heat. So we cut a deal with the 7As. I said, you know what, you need 1 boilers. And he's like, absolutely. He says, if maybe P.A.L.A.N.T.E came, maybe this association can take some of this money. No. We need a boiler, we need a roof, because, the cascading leak and everything. And he's like, absolutely fine. And I said, but I need something from you. And he's like, what's that? I says, I need the eviction papers for that dude, the super. So sure enough, it's a 7-8 takeover. It's not violent, but it's very aggressive because the cops come in, the 7-8 comes in, and the goal is to change every lock in the public areas, and the roof, in the basement. So they came in, and the 7-8 administrator went in his jacket, and he gave it, these other papers you want? And I'm like, absolutely. So I went like this, I knocked on the door, the super was a ground floor apartment, I says, I told you I'm gonna take you out. So guess where the P.A.L.A.N.T.E's first office was?
In that building?
The super's apartment, absolutely. I do not know, we were a magnificent group because we had tenants that knew how to split the phone wire, so my landline, that was supposed to ring on the 5th floor was ringing downstairs. So, but we, the worst buildings on 146th Street between 7th and were our buildings. And I invite you guys to visit that block because when you see that block, that is the work that we did. So what happened was when we occupied the apartment, we told the 7A we want to use this as an office. And every building that started coming to us, hey, little by little, they started coming. So, the story that that I like to tell is that landlords, because we exist now, landlords are a little more cautious. Like you might find a little Elsia in one of those apartments and you not know that the cat is fit, So, just take good care of your clients. Now, does that mean that we change the situation? No. We still have issues in the community, but in our buildings, as an administrator, the landlord lost control. He was forced to sell to a responsible owner. And now everybody's living in habitable conditions for a new building, and the landlord's maintaining it. We cut a deal with the new landlord that he's not allowed to take anybody to court unless he calls us first. And so that's the reason why he has to take them to court.
Which actually brings a good question. Like, what is it? So take a situation like mine, for example. I come to you and I say, "Look, man, we need help." So what do you do? Because there's the actual advocacy, but there's also the organizing part too. So tell us, walk us through sort of your process.
Yeah. So when P.A.L.A.N.T.E is very unique when we organize tenants association. We don't go into a building and say, yeah, who wants to be president? Yeah, who wants to be whatever position? And we have to be careful about that because you might pick the wrong person. Initially, you get a lot of power to that person. But when someone like in your building, what we do is we meet with the tenants, and I tell the tenants, we will help you if you want help. So we're going to give you homework. If we don't see the homework, we're not going to come back. So our homework at initial meeting is we give them the checklist. Let's see the conditions in your apartment. And if they are able to fill that out, take the time, that is first step that they want to work, they want change. And then the second thing is that, we let them know initially what are your rights. So we come in armed with, cheat sheet. I would tell people, people don't like to read. So if you want to, you cannot hold back a secret, put it in writing, right? So I tell them that part. I tell them, people don't like to read, but I'm going to give you this. You should read it because these are your rights. So it really engages the people into getting something done. And what the result of that really is that the work that we have to do is much smaller. Because it's not harder fighting for one tenant for repairs than getting a whole group. So in the case with your building, change hands, it's a new landlord. And, the law says the new landlord is the shoes of the old landlord, so it's the same landlord. So when you're going through, our friend, it's amazing, how we're doing homeless prevention, but it's amazing how he was capitalizing on the opportunity, how he was abusing the system and the resources of the city of New York. So, he kept on getting a German, there's obviously a tremendous nuisance. There's a lot of seniors whose, their lives are at risk, anything can happen in the hallway. So what we did was with the group, we we motivate the landlord, because you have to motivate him to do what he's supposed to do. And what he's supposed to do is evict this guy. If he is, whatever it is, services that he needs, if he needs to be in not a mental institution, in a drug rehabilitation center, do that. But the tenants should not be the one, being subjected to this type of behavior simply because as a tenant that is being a nuisance there. So we motivated him to do that, and then we collected all the checklists, and then we gave it to the landlord all at one time. And the result of that is that the landlord says, you know what? These people are organizing. So let me get in front of it now before it gets out of control. So what usually happens, like in every case, is that the landlord tries to call me. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll talk to him. The mediation usually lasts no more than 10 minutes. And that's how you know whether or not we're gonna get anywhere if he's being truthful. And the case is that, we provide them all of the issues at once, and then we set them on a clock. 30 days later, we don't see results, and then we go and activate. We have P.A.L.A.N.T.E, we have phases. We have 0.90, 100, to level 200. And by the time that we get to level 400, the landlord is forced to sell. And the way we do it is very simple. You're not gonna see P.A.L.A.N.T.E doing rebel housing, with the little banners in front of the building. We don't do that. What we do is we bring in all the enforcement agencies into the building. So, there's HPD, the Housing Preservation Development, then there's the Division of Housing Community Renewal. There's also the Tenant Protection Unit. We have great strategic partnerships with these guys, but these guys make our job a lot easier. Department of Health for mold, for mice. So everybody gets in, so then the landlord gets to see that he's being fined for things that he's not taking care of. But in your case, your landlord was having a nervous breakdown because he literally was very proud that he had removed the violations for the prior owner. And I said, you have complaints here. Address them before we address them. So he did, he's addressing them, and I told him to go get contractors. He's doing that. But now what's really remarkable, Basil, and I haven't even talked to you about this, he is actually trying to evict the first, gentrifiers in the building. So the white folks that moved in, they got leases where they claim that the apartments are not regulated, and he's targeting those folks. So I called him not too long ago. I told him, I said, you really want to do this? Because now we're going to engage the district attorney's office, the district attorney has a housing division, the Manhattan district attorney has a housing division, as well as the tenant protection unit. And, if he doesn't get his act together, it's already legally deregulated. What's gonna happen is that he's gonna get on some radar as the agency is gonna cost more. So that's what we are right now with that. But historically, with all of the buildings that P.A.L.A.N.T.E organizes, it's that they go two ways. Either they do it right away, or B, they're gonna have to sell, because they don't do the math before we get there.
Is there are there sets of violations that you feel are quite common across the buildings that you, like the boiler, nobody's boiler works or whatever?
Right. I think the number one violation, which is probably one of the dumbest violations that these landlords get, is for not having a sign saying in case of emergency, call this guy. That's like I call it the dumbest one, because that is just common sense, right? Somebody walks into the building, they need to call somebody in case of an emergency. Second thing is the lack of heat and hot water, and the lack of the security in the front door, the intercom. But it changes. It really depends on the building. It depends on the tenants living in the building, whether you have the working poor versus you having, a higher income building. The tenants need to demand. That's what I tell everybody. I told tenants, like, look, make believe you're in a restaurant. What do you expect when you go to a restaurant? A napkin. That's good, right? Then we go to fork, right? Spoon would be nice, right? A knife to go with it. So it's a level of service, no matter what color you are, no matter what income bracket you're in, you have the right to do that. So.
But implicit in that is that some tenants, communities have more agency than others.
That's right.
And you have to sort of step in when. Right?
Yeah, and once, and I think that once the group, you don't even have to be like a formal tenants association, like. The president of your building, there's no, Ms. Laverne, she's a ringleader. We call her the ringleader, Ms. Laverne. Because, she's senior, she's been doing this before. But there's nothing like official saying, you're the vice president, you're this. It's really about coming together as one. And everybody has the same issues. One person has mice, the other person's gonna have mice because mice travel, And the same thing with any condition, heat, it affects everybody.
Two quick sort of organizational questions. Mm-hmm. What's your relationship like with the elected officials, and how does that impact it? Well, related but somewhat separate. how do you keep the organization going? Grant writing, money from the city and the state, how is that?
Well, we work with every elected official that are in the communities that we represent. So we from all levels of government. We have congressional, we have state senate, state assembly, and council member. And the way we look at it is that they work for us. We don't work for them. But we're not, demanding. We build a partnership. And with that partnership, what we end up getting is access to the intergovernmental affairs person from all the agencies. So I like to believe that P.A.L.A.N.T.E has more power than a lot of the local council people, simply because those relationships are intact. Those relationships have been cultivated throughout the years. So we're able to do a lot without having to go through the proper channel. For example, when you look at nonprofits, you look at the legal services, right? We provide legal services. But the regular legal services, if there's a legal lockout, their initial response would be, we're gonna go to court, we're gonna do an order to show cause, legal lockout, not P.A.L.A.N.T.E. You know what we do? We go to the building and we call 911, and we wait there. And we wait for the cops to come. What happened? Legal lockout. Then, again, the right of the tenant. Where's the super? I don't know. You know how many supers, Basil, we have hiding from us still? Because the last one, we climbed, one of our volunteers, that's one of the dynamic things about the organization, one of our volunteers climbed the staircase, no, not the stairs, the fire escape, and went through a bathroom window because we could not identify who changed the lock. So since we could not change the lock, the cop said you could do whatever you want, so we went up, luckily that was the second floor. The thing is that, how you approach the situation and whether it's grassroots or whether you're just gonna wait for government to do the stuff for you. However, working with these elected officials has given us a lot more power. Because if we call them and they don't listen to us, then we call the elected official who listens to us and then they're gonna call. So, it's been very productive in that sense. And with all of that, by the way, we already got our first landlord in jail. We just don't brag about it, because just in case, right? But this is the idea is really the approach of how we do our work, and our work is very different. In terms of funding, we're still an organization that's growing. We just turned 15 years this month. But if you look at the trajectory of what we've done so far, it allowed us to be able to grow financially. So our budget is just a little bit over $1 million, which is nothing compared to the large nonprofit. However, as an organization, we are the type of organization that doesn't wait to get funding to do the work. We do the work, and they're like, we're doing this work. So, we make the big nonprofits kind of like have to answer really tough questions because the elected officials ask. So, we have discretionary money from the council. The council people, one person will give us $5,000, another one $10,000, and then the speaker power, which is what we really go after. The $200,000, so you kind of make sure that you stay there every year, the $200,000 level. We have also state money from the state assembly person and the state senate people, but it's not a lot. It's not a lot of money when you really think about it in terms of the work and the staffing that's required. But most importantly is the amount of time that it takes for us to see that money. So like money that was allocated to us in June of last year, we still don't have the contracts signed. So we are at the mercy of the agency and funders, foundations that are supporting us today.
Before I go any further, anybody have any questions? Questions or comments? Sure. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Michael Myers, I'm the president of the Young Civil Rights Coalition. You are such a dynamo, so I'm very surprised that Ernest somehow let you get out of there. If I had been Bernstein, and I know you about Bernstein, I would make sure you stay. But you're the kind of person that we need.
Thank you.
Now tell me, in terms of, because you're what we call in my civil rights organization an ombuds person. An ombuds person is the person you call who will get action for you. Most times it's a lawyer, it doesn't have to be, but because lawyers know the process, they know the people, and they can get answers and they can get people on the phone. I'm surprised that you could find the landlords. I mean, the real landlords. Usually they have a real estate agency, or somebody, or a lot of people ahead of them. And they live on my own someplace.
Right, they have LLCs, yeah.
So I'm surprised that you got action. you as a
Yeah.
that action from the landlord as opposed
Yeah.
to the superintendent's office.
Yeah.
They know the deal.
Yeah.
They get
I
a-
think, I mean, I think it's our approach. So, and you just reminded me, so that I probably should have said. Remember when I said that I actually had moved out already and, I was offered $1 million just to turn my back away from the 3 buildings. Like literally, they sent some dude to come talk to me and he said, look, just pull away. And I said, no. He said, well, what do you want? I said, I want the same thing I wanted last year. He's like, what? He said, but then the interveners, what they were called, the new landlords wanted to buy. They wanted me out of rate. The thing here is really our approach. And I mean, if I show you my text, you'll laugh. But I have landlords that advocate.
That's my question. How do you replicate yourself? Because you're.
My mother can have another one. But I can tell you one thing, is really, and that's what I do at P.A.L.A.N.T.E. We inspire greatness in our youth. I try to create mini male and female Elsias. And, when you get, it's called Stand and Deliver, our program. And what we do is we get college students, and they get to see live, what happens. And I suspect, that eventually they're gonna take on a field like that. And, our approach, again, is our approach to how we conduct business. So what I found out is that the bigger the landlord, the more reputable and the more sane they are. The smaller the landlord, they stay small, they don't grow because they're nitpicking and being it's not profitable, But we have gone after the big landlords. And those big landlords right now, I literally have one landlord that if I want to find out who owns the other building, I call him and he'll tell me. Because they have their own network. So I'll give you an example. There was a fire at 617 West 141st Street. It was all over the news, fire on fire. The landlord wanted to make it difficult for the tenants because, they just wanted somewhere to belong, whatever they can get back, right? So I reached out to that landlord, and I knew that landlord. And he said, yeah. I said, can you give him a call and let him know that when I'm about to lock corners, he doesn't let us in? And the minute that landlord called him, the guy became a peach. Like literally a peach. He called me back, Ms. Vasquez. I said, look, you're just trying to arrange, for the tenants to get their belongings because remember, when you have a fire, you've been evicted, you didn't get in your house, you want at least something, right, to take with you to wherever it is that, Destiny has. But that moment that the landlord called them, you know what the landlord said to him? They said, P.A.L.A.N.T.E. doesn't like to fight, but they're very experienced fighters. I was
Is that
like,
true?
yeah. Yeah. I told your guy, actually, your landlord, I said, listen, you're making this very complicated for yourself. I said, you really should look up and see what happens, with the cases that we have. Because, like I said, we don't brag about it. But we're very, and I learned this from the landlords, we're very persistent. So we don't take no for an answer. You have to give us a yes or a maybe. But then again, we only fight for 3 things. We will fight for habitable conditions, legal rents, and no harassment. P.A.L.A.N.T.E. is an acronym. It stands for People Against Landlord Abuse and Tenant Exploitation. And you know why we're called P.A.L.A.N.T.E.? Because when we were in court in our grassroots, there was a Dominican lady, that was the other Dominican apartment I told you guys about, and she used to wear this big skirts. And whenever we had a bad day, she would go, Pa'lante, coño. You know what that means? You know what coño means. And she literally would go like this with a skirt. And she's like, no, we're going to win this. It was really persistent, being persistent. And I believe that when nonprofits, when tenants, they stay focused, they're going to get what they want. You just have to do it professionally, in a professional setting. Have to do it, documenting things correctly, using and holding elected officials accountable if, did I say it's about public? Yeah. So let's use, for example, public advocate, Jemani Williams. The guy is a 0 to the left. When you put the decimal points? So his office sends us clients to help them with city issues. Why? That's his job. It's about holding them accountable. So I call his office and I said, do not send anybody. Do your job. Because, you're having somebody that want you to go fight the city of New York. It's like, I'm already fighting the city of New York, in different levels. Specifically as your home ownership of Black and Latino families. So I already have my own mess going on. But to have someone in the public advocate's office that have I don't know how big their staff is. Our staff was only like 4 people. Right now, we're down to 5 people with me. And we're literally just 3 right now. So how can a public advocate that is advocating only for himself, and I have put that in, send his people to our, they have attorneys, they have resources, and the community doesn't understand that, like, holding them accountable. Because the only way that they're gonna change is with accountability. So,
Now, actually, you touched on something that I did want to bring up and make sure we got to. You go to court with your tenants.
yeah, we do, yeah. We are, unlike the other nonprofits, we are proactive. So we're the ones suing on behalf of the tenants. Normally with nonprofits, in order for them to get an attorney, the landlord has to take you to court. So we don't, we actually sue landlords, and now with the harassment and, all these things. So we go there when we organize buildings, and when we get to level 300, the level 300 is when we go to court. What we do is we file an HP action, same model that we started on our grassroots. Everybody hold on to your own. It's on lockdown, because you could file an HP action, but you're only gonna get repairs. And more than likely, the landlord's not gonna do all the repairs. Do some, but not all, right? After the signed consent order. But then, when we get the landlord to take them to court individually, we get happy. We're happy. We're like, about time. So everybody gets sued individually for non-payment, and that's when the rubber meets the road. That is when we know the case is about to end, because there's a saying in Spanish, he who loses pays. And clearly they have conditions, documented conditions, the 301, HPD. So the tenants would hold their rent, and then when we finally get to court, we're like, okay, so, how much should he get of my money? So it changes the conversation, as opposed to saying, I paid my rent and he has not made the repairs. So for every, and we don't just go with what's going on now, we go back to what's going on the last 7 years. So we train the tenants like, so, how long you had roaches, how long you've had, mold, how many days you go without heat? And we really know that if it's gas for like a year, that's an automatic 20% off. You're right. But it's not that our tenants are trying to get the money, because that's not what we're about. The situation that the only way that a slumlord learns not to do it again is that you have to hit them in the pocket. You have to hit them in the pocket, and you have to let them know that this is or you're next room, and that you guys are not going to go anywhere. And you see the change immediately. When the tenants do that, the landlords become a little bit humble, a little more respectful. And then at that time, then it changes. It's not that antagonistic relationship. It's a conversation. It's mediation, and it works. It works.
Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
I have 2 questions.
Yes, your name then.
My name is Makita Knight. I'm a Hunter student, JFU scholar. And my 2-part question is, number 1, is the agency, does your work encompass all incomes, or is it just specifically for low income?
No, everybody. We represent doctors, we represent nurses, we represent totally zero income people. We're not income restricted, because housing does not discriminate.
College professors.
Yes, right, exactly. Exactly. No, but we really love doing what we do. What's your next question?
And the second question is, is there a fee for your services, or
That's a good question.
Yeah. No, totally free. We tell people that we will do the work for them, we'll help them. They don't have to give us any money. But we do give them homework. We tell them, we're not going to charge you, but we got to give you homework so you could do the work to help us out. But what usually happens is that, there's a different vibe at P.A.L.A.N.T.E. It's more like, P.A.L.A.N.T.E. Familia. So we tell them, we're going to help you, but you have to help your neighbor. It's like, remember you that went through that, right? He's like, the guy next door, and I'm like, well, let's get your neighbors, it's about paying it forward. So what usually happens is that they want to become members of P.A.L.A.N.T.E. And we're very specific about who can join, right? Because obviously we're not going to have a landlord join as a member. So they support us with and they would love to, right? But they would support us with a $50 donation, annual donation. And then they get a little, membership card, and They get, our t-shirts are pretty animated. We send messages to landlords with our t-shirts, and we don't sell our t-shirts. So you ever see a P.A.L.A.N.T.E t-shirt, like that's an authentic member of P.A.L.A.N.T.E. But there's one t-shirt that says, I dare you. You know, the other one is called the unextraditable. You cannot extradite me. You know, there's my whole, you know. So we always look at that. So members, you know, little perks here and there, but it's usually about helping and paying it forward.
There's a question over here.
Yeah, I'm Laura, I'm a professor in the Urban Policy and Planning Department. You mentioned that you recently hired somebody to do public policy for your organization, and I'm wondering what your agenda is, you know, in terms of city policy and state policy that will lift up lots of tenants.
Yeah, well, Jack just joined about a month and a half ago, but I'll tell you, and Jack, you could probably add some stuff if you want, but, you know, one of the big issues that we have is the city's alternative enforcement program. Because that one is just based on finding landlords. It's not based, it's only based on brick and mortar, it's not based on that these tenants are suffering and they need repairs in their apartment. So the alternative enforcement program, the last hearing was in 2012, right?
Yeah.
2012, and it's the worst program ever because it frustrates our work, 100%. It basically consists of, unless you didn't know, is that the landlords get fined, I think it's like $200 per violation per day. You know, it's all the fines are great, but we cannot get regular inspectors. We only have one inspector assigned to that building. Even if we go to court and get a court-mandated inspection, we get the same inspector. They're probably making about $40,000 a year. Well, at that time, it starts, you know, putting in a relationship with the super and so forth. So that's one. Another one that we're looking at is the tenant interim lease program. We've been very active. We have something called Till Justice. These are people who are self-managing their own building, have been doing it for decades with a promise that the city told them they were going to pay. They were going to own their apartments as co-ops for $250. Now, since de Blasio, I don't like de Blasio, but since de Blasio, he decided that he wants to steal these homes away from these people and not make them homeowners. So we're changing that. We've actually had a very successful town hall in April, and we just over 400, 500 people, right, Jacari? And then there's a few other things that we're looking at, but those are the primary one. Oh, and then the other one is also the NYCHA succession rights, because it's a bill that's been sitting there stale, and it's to allow the family members who are not on the family composition, you know, if they're elderly and things like that, so that they can remain in the home, because NYCHA does not have a heart. NYCHA will roll out, I mean, I'll tell you, with Miss Katia, for example, Miss Katia was like 99. She had like a tank, bedridden, and Miss Katia's body wasn't even cold by the time that the marshal came. So we're trying to change those things, and I mean, Jack and I were still going back and forth, because I have like the big picture stuff, but if you're willing to volunteer, you know, a couple of hours, we'd love to have you.
Did you want to?
Jack, you want to add something?
Yeah, another big thing that we're going to start pushing for, and this is on the federal level, is you know, working to repeal the Faircloth Amendment, which is in the 1990s, you know, when the federal government decided to just completely gut the welfare state under Clinton. Senator Faircloth of North Carolina said, as of October 31st, 1999, there can be no new Section 8 funded apartments anywhere in the country. So it's a cap on how many public housing units are allowed and eligible to be funded by UT. And so there have been, you know, a couple of pushes at the federal government to you know, repeal the Faircloth Amendment, but it's going to take a lot of work, because as you can see right now, there seems to be only one party interested in actually governing, and there are other policies that Elsia and I want to go through at the state and the city level. So, you know, if you love to, you know, I'd love to pick your brain sometime. If you have a couple of, you know, pet policies that you'd like to see at the city or state level be changed, you know, come by.
Any other questions? Yes. Yes.
So I guess, well, first I'm Nicole. I'm also a JP scholar.
Thank you.
And Hunter, I'm the editor-in-chief of the student newspaper, The Envoy, where I've written about residence life, and I've also been a contributor for The Nation, where I'm currently writing a piece about student housing. So I guess I have two questions as well. One being, first, like, have you guys ever done any work in regards to like dormitories or student housing, or have any students ever come to you and been like, these are the conditions I'm living at in my college dorm, and I don't know how to go about this. And then my second one would be, how would you suggest that students could advocate for better conditions in their housing if they're unsatisfied with the quality of it?
That's interesting.
Yeah, no, that's great questions, great questions. I think, first, to answer your first question is that we have not, but it sounds very sexy to look into. I love to just take on new projects, especially, but I would be very curious to see what would be the terms of the lease, because that has to be some sort of contractual agreement between the students and the school. But I think it's very interesting, and I think, I think it's important that it's be looked into, because students do get exploited a lot. We have our office very close to Columbia University, and it's amazing, like what even the school does to the students. We had a Barnard, we had one student who literally she was kicked out of her dorm for 2 weeks. And I just did not see, she literally had to go back home for 2 weeks. So yeah, that's something that we could definitely look into.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Any other, yes?
Well, I have no question, but we've been speaking like the last 2 months, kind of stuff with us regarding housing stuff. So, like my story seems to be very much like yours. It's like
Yeah.
very fun.
No, thank you for coming. Thanks
Yeah,
for being
thank you,
here.
yeah.
No, and it's, we'll take any more questions, and then I want a couple closing points. Yes.
I'm Priscilla Jimenez. I'm a freshman at Hunter. My question was because you mentioned that, when tenants come together to challenge the landlord, it's very much like a communal process. And so I was wondering, you talked about like undocumented tenants, and I wonder if tenants like them or any other people that are kind of vulnerable that might be hesitant to kind of legally challenge their landlords, and what kind of that process is like.
Well, it's about, when you're dealing with the undocumented families, it's about trust. In P.A.L.A.N.T.E, we have a very, very good network of undocumented families that we have assisted. But I tell you, I'll give you an example that this person was just all on her own. Remember I mentioned earlier that we had our first landlord in jail? It was an undocumented family. So what happened there was that when Obama was president, all the children, the unaccompanied children were coming. The landlord, a new landlord, used that as an opportunity to rebel rouse against the tenants that it was undocumented. There was a nonprofit that I'm not going to name. They did a press conference, they did all these things, and then the landlord retaliated. And then he went at 10 p.m. at night as the news of all these migrant kids were coming in, and the kid that opened the door was the only English and Spanish speaker person, right? So the landlord said to them, tell your mom that she has until, or your dad, that she has until 11 p.m. at night to move out. That Friday, for that week. The whole building got empty except for one tenant. And that tenant had 2 children, lived with her in-laws, not in-laws, the sister and brother-in-law, no, sister and her husband. So there were 4 children, 2 adults. They were paying $3,000 monthly rent for this apartment. So, and I want to get to the point about undocumented. And she came to our office, and we were able not only to help her sister, but she got herself a green card. The nuns that took her in, because they had to take the landlord basically ripped the building apart. He removed staircases to try to get her out. There was no, if you guys actually Google the name Adam Cohen's Landlord, that's the case. And that's the dude that we got in jail. And within the undocumented community, that story resonates with others. So I think throughout the years, the more education we do, they are going to come and they are going to fight. But I've got to be honest with you, I have yet to find an undocumented immigrant, up until literally last week, that they just did not know their rights, that has not fought a good fight. We have a trajectory of rent overcharges. We have long history. We've actually put in a little bit over $4 million in tenants' pockets on rent refunds because the landlords were charging them. Without an attorney, by the way, this is just a simple application. And you know the majority of the beneficiaries are undocumented families. So it gets around, they have their own network, and of course we have our own mariachis, we got kid mariachis. So we're part of the church, we have affiliations with the churches, local churches, the local mariachis. It's a family, it's a network. And even some families, we think that just because they're like, let's say Mexico, that they speak Spanish, we have people that don't speak Spanish. So what we normally do is we get the other one that speaks Mestizo to help us translate. Again, it's about our approach, how we do it. But at the end of the day, they are learning. It's like any immigrant group, that comes in, you have the Dominicans coming in the 40s, the 50s, you have, like every nationality that comes to the migrant, they have their own network and they know where to go to get help.
I'll just end with a part of the story which got Elsia working on our building is just a way to talk about why so much of her work is important and why speaking up as a tenant is so important. Because I told you a story about the guy who lived in the building, he'd been there for about 7 years and causing all this trouble. He wound up leaving the apartment to sort of live with his girlfriend, but renting the apartment as a trap house. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that he did was, as when he was gone, I guess somebody left their stuff in the apartment and nobody was there to open. So a guy, I heard a sound that come from next door, and there was a guy trying to pry the lock open. Some other guy trying to pry the lock open. When I I was like, and I was obviously freaking out, and then went to call the police. So I go back to my door, look out the people, he was gone. So I was like, oh, I hope he's not in the building somewhere. Went outside. It turns out that by the time I got outside, there were police already there. Why? Because he wound up trying to climb the fire escape to get into the window. I share the fire escape with that apartment. And when that happened, I was talking to a police officer, and then some of the other tenants came downstairs. I was like, all right, enough's enough. Like, we've got to figure this thing out. And that's when I called Elsia. The old landlord had said, call the district attorney's office, and they were helpful, but it was always go back to the landlord. And I said, something's got to break here. And but it was Elsia that put the pressure and talked us through this whole sort of process of how to advocate, how to organize, what to do in terms of the landlord, how to interact with them. And I think one of the most important takeaways was document everything. Write everything down. Timetables. Who'd you speak to? Who came into the building? Be careful who comes into the building, right, and knocks on your door. And I think just that level of that information exchange and the ability to make sure that the tenants could be heard went so far. Now everybody's like feeling better and more confident about where they live. And that's amazing. So
it's a beautiful building. And I think what you guys did was you rolled it, we call it rolling out the red carpet to the new landlord. Like, welcome, this is what you got, this is us, and these are the services that we expect that you would deliver. And he's making, a turnaround, he tried to contact my local elected officials, so that, because apparently he wanted a meeting with me, but I already talked to him over the phone, so I don't have to have a meeting with him. And I told my elected officials that a specific word was like, no, we're handling the case, we don't have to have a meeting. But when landlords, they try different things, when they start seeing 1, 2, 3 tenants come up, but they become a little more focused if there's more than 10 people at any given building. And organized at the same time. And one of the strategies that we have is that we don't give them piecemeal information to the landlord. We take it all together, like, here you go. And I tell them, you can arrange access, because again, it's repairs, no harassment, and legal grants. And it works, and I think it works, and I think, there should be more people like you, Basil, that would reach out to organizations like us. Because you gave them your home. I remember hanging out with you with a mask. We all have masks, remember? And, speaking to tenants and intimacy and have that space. It's not the same thing as you were to do a meeting in the lobby. You gave them that privacy.
Yeah,
where
that
we
was
could have,
important.
but that's a big issue.
That was important, that's just to reiterate. Because I was concerned about who this guy would see in the building moving around and as we were trying to get together, especially because I lived next to him, right? I didn't want him seeing who was coming into the apartment or how we were meeting in the hallway. But I said, just come into the apartment. Like everybody, just come into my apartment. And people were like, are you okay with people sit down? I was like, yeah, I'm okay. Right. No, because some people are a little weird about that, right? But I was like, no, these are my friends, these are my neighbors. Come on into the apartment. Let's talk and hash this out. And then I think to your point, this is about building community too, right? It's a building's a community and about building community and the importance of that. On that note, thank you for being part of our community.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.